everyone, it's Angela from Cake Angel, and in today's Bake Along I'm going to show you how to make some traditional Welsh cakes. Now these are also known as bakestones and are a really nice traditional treat in Wales, so let's run through the ingredients. For this we're using 7 basic ingredients, and I'll give you the measurements for these as we start to add them to our mixing bowl. So to start with, we're going to add our pinch of salt and 225 grams of self-raisin flour. Next we're going to add in our 100 grams of unsalted butter, and for this I'm making dairy-free Welsh cakes, so I'm using a plant-based butter for this. And you just want to give it a little bit of a mix so that it starts to combine, and then we're actually going to use our hands and mix it together until it forms breadcrumbs. So this is where your hands are going to get dirty, but I find this is the best way to make Welsh cakes. You can get a really good texture in your dough this way, and you want to rub all those ingredients together so they combine really nicely. And you'll see how it almost looks a little bit like sand as well. So you just want to keep going until you make sure you've no large bits of butter left in the mix. So it looks like this. Next thing we're going to do is add in our sugar and our raisins. You can use currants, you could use other dried fruits if you prefer, and I'm using 50 grams of each. So that's 50 grams of sugar and 50 grams of raisins for this. And I'm just giving it a stir with my hand again, just to make sure that everything is evenly distributed. Next I'm going to make a well in the center of the bowl, and we're going to add our liquids to this. So I'm just going to quickly wash my hands before I do that. So first I'm adding 2 tablespoons of milk. Again, I'm using a plant-based milk as this is a dairy-free recipe, but you can use regular milk for this. Whole milk is absolutely fine. And then to that we're adding 1 egg. And I'm going to start to mix it together with my spatula, and then we will combine it with our hands again, as I just find it's much easier to work the dough with my hands. And this mix comes together really quickly. I don't really see the need to use a hand mixer for it, but you absolutely could if you wanted to. I just like to feel the dough in my hands because I know I've got the right consistency that way. So I'm just going to scrape off everything from the spatula, and then I'm going to go ahead and start kneading it together with my hand. So you can see I'm just kind of gathering it up to the center of the bowl and then pushing it back down, and I just keep doing this until it forms a really nice stiff dough. And you'll know when this is ready because it will stop sticking to the bowl itself. You are still going to have some on your hands too, but the majority of it is going to stick to itself rather than anything else. You can see how nicely that's combining for us. And there we go, that's our dough made. So I'm just going to pop this to one side. I'm going to wash my hands again, and then we're going to roll it out onto the counter. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some flour to my surface. You could do this on parchment paper as well if you prefer. You just want to make sure your surface is evenly coated with flour. I'm going to pop my dough on there and give it a little knead as well, just to pick up some of that flour. Now, even though the dough is quite stiff, it is still fairly sticky, so kneading that extra little bit of flour is definitely going to help. And this is the size cutter that I'm using. This is about a 2.5-inch circle. And I'm going to roll out using some guide rings. Now, these are just regular paint sticks from the hardware store that I use purely for the purpose of rolling out dough. And they're about 5 mil thick. So using guide sticks will also make sure that my Welsh cakes are the same depth throughout. I'm just going to roll back and forth and use those guide sticks as a guide for when to stop rolling. And that's great. I'm just lifting it off the surface to make sure it hasn't stuck. I'm going to roll it a little bit more. And don't forget, you can obviously flour your rolling pin as well if you find it is starting to stick to it. Add some extra to the top of your dough as well, and that will help. So now I'm just going to grab some parchment paper, and this is to put the cut Welsh cakes on. And then you can see I'm using the fluted end of my circle cutter. You could use the round end if you want, really doesn't matter. The traditional way usually is the fluted end. So just go ahead and start cutting them out. You should get at least a dozen from this mixture. And what you want to do, you'll notice I'm just putting the offcuts to one side. Once I've cut enough from this roll, I'll actually roll everything back up, and then I'll re-roll and cut again until we've used up all of the mix. Now you will notice with some as well that you have some of the raisins that are sticking out of the Welsh cakes. It's up to you whether you want to pull those out to tidy it up a little, or you can leave them there. They are quite a rustic treat, so it doesn't really matter either way. So now you can see I'm just rolling everything back up, giving it a little bit of a knead in my hands and on the counter again, adding that little bit of extra flour to stop it sticking. And then we're just going to go ahead and speed this up while I continue to cut the rest of the mix. If you're not a fan of raisins or currants, you could use cranberries. They're a really nice addition to use instead. You could also just cut them in half once they're baked and put jam in them. They're traditionally known as jam splits. This is the traditional method, using either currants or raisins. Okay, that's all of them done, so I'm going to clean up my counter. The next thing we're going to do is bake them, and I'm actually using a plug-in griddle for this. So I've just sprayed a little bit of my canola spray on there. You just want to put a little bit on there because they do have a tendency to stick. And then you're going to go ahead and let them bake for a few minutes on each side until they're golden brown. Okay, so I'm going to turn them over. They're a nice golden colour. They roughly take about 3 to 4 minutes on each side, and it depends on the temperature that you're using as well. I'm using this about 325, so 325 degrees Fahrenheit. If you were doing this in a pan, you just want to keep an eye on them to make sure that they don't burn, because they can actually start to brown too quickly in a pan. And then just keep flipping them until they're done. And what you'll notice once they are baked thoroughly, the outside edge will actually just start to go a little less translucent as well. So it'll firm up a bit as well when you touch it. It won't be spongy at all. So these look like they're probably done. Let's take a close look. Yep, that looks perfect. So the last thing you want to do is just toss them in some sugar. And again, this is the traditional way of serving Welsh cakes. You could leave them if you didn't want to put them in sugar. Just using a regular sugar for this. You could use brown sugar, you could use a cinnamon sugar. Really depends on the flavour that you're looking for with your Welsh cakes. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these coated. And that's it. That's how easy it is to make traditional Welsh cakes. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this bake along. Don't forget to make a comment if you've ever tried these. I think they're not that popular in North America in particular, but it's always something we like to make for St. David's Day, which is on March the 1st. Let's have a quick look inside one of them. You can see the texture's really nice and light, and they're well cooked as well. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can get notifications of all the other bake along videos that we have, and I hope to see you on the next video.